$84 trillion will change hands from baby boomers to the generations that follow over the next 2 decades. Just because there is a gap doesn't mean that you, according to the donor or investor, are the right person to actually step into that space. It's very important that as you are putting together your pitch, as you are having these conversations with those that have the ability to fund your dream, that you not just talk about yourself and what you bring to the table, but this board of advisors that are helping to bring this mission to life.
Trust me, I get it. You're feeling the pressure to keep your faith separate from your work, worried that pursuing your God-given dreams might be seen as selfish or misguided. For far too long, we've been held back by a world that tells us that faith and ambition don't mix, that our divinely inspired visions are just wishful thinking. But here's what I've discovered. Our faith isn't a liability in our leadership. As a matter of fact, it's the source of our strength and wisdom. When we fully integrate our leadership with our Christian values, then and only then do we tap into that unshakable divine power. The real challenge is navigating how to boldly pursue our purpose while staying anchored in our faith. And that's exactly what The Beacon Show is all about. Each week, we bring you biblical wisdom and practical strategies from true beacons, Christian leaders who are illuminating the world. And it's also that you can let your light shine brighter and brighter. I'm Tamara Jackson, and this is The Beacon Show.
Welcome to The Beacon Show, where we believe in the power of faith-driven innovation to transform lives and communities. I'm your host, Tamara Jackson, and in this episode, I want to talk about how to fund your vision. Now, a lot of times I talk to passionate change makers that want to make a difference in the world, but the big problem that they face is money. How do I find the money to fund my vision? Well, here's what you need to know. $84 trillion will change hands from baby boomers to the generations that follow over the next 2 decades. But not only that, many of these baby boomers have made the decision to actually transition a large portion of their wealth before they pass away. And many of these boomers want to donate their funds to charity. They have a passion for making a difference in the world. So if you currently lead a nonprofit organization or a social enterprise, and your goal is to make a difference, I want you to listen in, because this is your opportunity to attract the money that you need to fund the dream that God has placed in your heart. Well, there's a couple of things that you need to keep in mind if you are looking to receive money for your dream. Well, first of all, you need to know that those that have the money to donate or to invest are getting hit up by many people. So because they have been able to amass this large sum of wealth, they are constantly being asked to support this cause or that cause, to invest in this business opportunity. And many of the people that have accumulated this wealth have done it by making wise investments. So that means that it's really important that you have a strategy if you're looking to attract funding. So what I want to do in this episode is talk about 5 things that you really need to have ready if you're looking for someone to donate or invest in your mission. Well, the first thing that I want you to have ready is your hook. Now, you'll notice as I started this conversation today, I talked about $84 trillion changing hands over the next 2 decades. Well, how are you going to attract attention when you have the opportunity to speak to a donor or an investor? You want a hook that will capture their attention. It could be a statistic like one that I've shared. It could be a question that really causes them to pause and think. But remember, I shared with you, these people are constantly being approached by someone who wants them to support them. So don't be boring. Make sure that what you bring to the table stands out. Show that you have a mission that is meaningful. And one of the ways that you can do that is by starting with a hook that will draw their attention to you. Now, the second thing that I want you to have ready is to be able to speak to the gap in your industry. Now, a lot of times when I talk to change makers, innovators, we tend to think, hey, the problem that I've identified or the way that I want to solve this problem is so different from what everyone else is doing in the space. But I want to challenge you on this. To a donor or an investor outside looking in, they're not going to have the unique insight that you have into how you want to attack this problem. So you may look very similar to other nonprofits, other social enterprises. And when I've gone to events where people are pitching to donors and investors, they often bring up competitors, other organizations that are doing something similar in the space. And sometimes the individual that is pitching is able to speak to how their approach is different. And unfortunately, in some instances, they are not able to speak to that. So I don't want you to be caught in a precarious situation. Make sure that you do your homework. In the business world, we talk about this in terms of doing a competitive analysis. What are some of the other major players in the area that you want to make a change in? How are they approaching the problem? And what is the gap? What is something that for whatever reason, everyone else is overlooking that you've identified? This is important because this gives you an opportunity to approach the challenge differently. And many people that have wealth to donate or invest, they're looking to be a part of something different. Remember, these are people that have started businesses and grown them from nothing because they saw a gap in their industry. So this is a way to connect with them and say, hey, I'm just like you. I've done the research. I've identified this gap, and I want to bring a solution to the table. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Beacon Show. You know, there are others like you that need encouragement in their journey as they are pursuing what God has called them to. And one step that you can take to help ensure that they receive the support they need is to rate and review. It only takes a few seconds, and it can make an eternal difference. You know how important it is to have someone in your corner that believes in you and wants to see you succeed. So take a moment to rate and review today. So that brings me to number 3, your unique spiritual calling. So you've identified this gap. How are you going to uniquely fill the gap? So just because there's a gap doesn't mean that you, according to the donor or investor, are the right person to actually step into that space. So this is where you need to speak to your faith-driven, innovative solution. How are you relying on God to give you divine ideas that are going to allow you to approach this in a way that no one else has? Remember, for our audience, these are faith-driven donors and investors, so they are interested in seeing financial returns, but they're also interested in a spiritual ROI. How are you uniquely advancing the kingdom through your work? All right, so let's move on to number 4. And this is one that I often see that is missed. Now, if you're leading a nonprofit organization, you have a board of directors. You have individuals that are a part of guiding and directing the course of your nonprofit. If you're on the for-profit side, you may have some people that you rely on that you look to for advice. Well, it's very important that as you are putting together your pitch, as you are having these conversations with those that have the ability to fund your dream, that you not just talk about yourself and what you bring to the table, but this board of advisors that are helping to bring this mission to life. The reality is that none of us are good at everything. So while you may be the visionary, the one that God has placed this dream in your heart, the reality is there are some areas of creating an impact that are not intuitive to you. They are not things that you're just naturally good at. So speak to the other people that are involved. Who have you been able to assemble to bring this vision to life? That also is important because it shows that you've been able to sell your vision to others that are willing to go in the trenches with you, that are willing to dedicate their time, effort, and energy, and sometimes finances to help bring this vision to life. So before you go and try to sell a donor or investor, first, make sure that you've been able to sell a team to come alongside you and advise you as you move forward. And then the last piece is really, really important, especially in the faith-driven space, is what are you going to do with the money? Sometimes when I go to events, I ask just a simple question. If I were to give you $1 million, what would you do with it? And one of two things happens. The individual has an answer that they are ready to fire off. I'm going to do this. I'm going to hire additional members of my team to help us grow and make sure that we have the skill set to do X, Y, and Z. So sometimes the person is really prepared with their answer. And that really does my heart good, because the reality is people do ask this question. But then there are other times, and unfortunately more often this is the case, when I ask that question, the individual stumbles. They don't know what to say. They're trying to figure out what type of answer I am looking for. And that tells me a couple of things. One, they haven't really been in enough positions where they've had to pitch their idea, or they haven't invested the time to really sit down and think about what they are going to do with the money. Many times we come up with a number that we like, we want 500,000, we want $1 million. But if someone is in a position to be able to donate that or invest that to support your mission, here's what they want to know. They want to know that you are going to be a good steward of that donation or that investment. I hope you are enjoying this episode of The Beacon Show. It is our mission here at Beaconship to empower you, the Christian visionary, to achieve the impact that you desire to create in the world. So we want to come alongside you and provide the training, the mentorship, and the funding readiness that you need to grow and scale your impact. I'd invite you to join our mailing list, where you can receive additional insights beyond this episode to build on what you've learned here today and take you to the next level. So go ahead, subscribe today, and we'll continue to keep you motivated and inspired to move forward in all God has called you to. I talked about earlier that in the faith-driven community, often they're looking for a return on investment. Well, when we are talking about a nonprofit organization or a social enterprise, it isn't always about actually getting a financial return. But the same principles hold true. If I give you $50,000, $100,000, $1 million, I want to know that you're not just going to waste it. I want to know that you are going to put it to good use. So make sure that you're able to speak to how you're going to use the money, and in doing so, how you are going to be a good steward of it. Remember that these people are pretty wise investors. They're pretty savvy with financial matters. So ultimately, when you ask someone to donate or invest in your cause, you're actually asking them to make a trade-off decision. So instead of donating to this cause or investing in this cause, or instead of just leaving my money in my investment accounts and allowing it to continue to grow, you're asking them to pull resources out of one place and put it somewhere else. Make sure that you're giving them a good reason to do so. So if they give you the $500,000, you're going to build a center that's going to allow you to double or triple the impact that you're making. Or maybe you're going to be able to hire someone that can really increase the amount of capacity that you have as an organization. Be able to speak to how you are going to use the money. And here's what's really important: in a way that's going to be meaningful to donors and investors. So that means that you need to do your homework. You need to understand what is important to the organization. Maybe it's a foundation, maybe you're applying for a grant, or maybe you're going to an event where you'll have an opportunity to speak to your cause and pitch. Make sure that you do your homework before you get in those situations so that you know what is important to that audience and you can speak to it. It's no different than if you're going to apply for a job. One of the best practices is to actually study the company where you're applying, right? So the same thing holds true here. If you want someone to financially invest in your dream, make sure that you dedicate the time to study and understand what is important to them. Now, you never want to practice manipulation, so you're not going to approach them with something just to tickle the ear or just to try to get their attention. This needs to be something that you know in your heart is a connection between what God has called you to and what they are passionate about. So that also means that you want to make sure that when you talk to donors and investors, you're talking to people that have a passion about the same things that you are passionate about. Not everyone that has money is a great fit to donate or invest in your cause. So we've talked about 5 things that I want to make sure that you have ready when you are in a situation where you're looking to attract the money that you need to fund your vision. Now, often the things that I've talked about today would be put into what we call a pitch deck. So document that you have ready, and anytime you are able to get a meeting with a donor or investor, you would take all of the things that I've talked about. You've got it in this nice professional presentation, and you're able to go in there in the course of a 20 or 30-minute meeting and speak to all the things that I've talked about. So equally important as I wrap this up is not only having these 5 things ready, but being prepared to confidently speak to them. One of the things that is going to give that donor or investor confidence that you will be a good steward of the money that they entrust to you is how confident you are as you are articulating the vision. So don't just prepare the answers to the things that I've talked about. Don't just prepare your pitch deck and have it looking pretty. Make sure that you prepare to deliver your pitch so that you are ready when this moment comes. At Beaconship, we believe in the power of faith-driven innovation to transform lives and communities. And we want to see you be successful. So make sure that you join the list so that you can receive more tips like this on how you can position yourself to benefit from the $84 trillion wealth transfer and make the difference that you are called to make in the world. God bless.